outputs. Now let's jump in and start playing. We'll assume you know how to hook up MIDI and audio. If you aren't in program mode, go there by pressing the Program button. If you have a rack, make sure your keyboard is transmitting on channel 1. Then check the upper right-hand corner of the 2600's display to see that it is on channel 1. If not, you can change it by using the channel bank buttons or the channel plus or minus soft buttons. By default, you will see the programs displayed as a list on the right side of the screen. If you press the Master button, then the View button, you can switch the display to a larger view. If you go back to the program mode, you will see just one program name displayed in the large letters. This can be useful if you're performing on stage and want to see the program name from a distance. For now, let's return to the display to the regular list view. To scroll through different programs, you can use the wheel, the arrow buttons, or the plus and minus buttons. You can also call up a specific program by typing its number and pressing Enter. As you explore our preset programs, make sure to move the sliders in the mod wheel. You will find that we have programmed them so that all 8 sliders and the wheel will change some aspect of the sound. In general, the first 4 sliders and the wheel will change programming parameters, while the last 4 will change effect parameters. For example, in program 80, which is Poly-Real Mini, slider A adds resonance to the filter. Slider B controls the filter cutoff. Slider C controls the attack time. Slider D controls release time and treble EQ. Slider E controls the wet-dry mix of the reverb. Slider F controls the decay time of the reverb. Slider G controls the amount of pre-delay in the reverb. And slider H controls the amount of the chorus delay effect. As you can see, by moving the sliders, you can have tremendous control over your sound. You will also want to try the mod wheel and the 2 buttons above it. In this program, the mod wheel adds vibrato. Switch button 1 turns on the arpeggiator. And switch 2 increases the amount of echo in the chorus delay effect. If you try this on your own keyboard and find that the sliders do not do the same things for this program that I have just described, go to the MIDI mode and check the control setup parameter on the MIDI transmit page. Make sure it's set to number 97, which is also called control setup. I'll talk more about this parameter later, but for now, just make sure it's set to number 97. As you scroll through the programs, you will find some with a caret character in between 2 names. For these programs, slider A will switch between 2 different sounds. For example, in program 74, With slider A down, you will hear new mutes, and with it up, you'll hear watt hour. Also, in most of our presets, slider E will control the overall wet-dry mix of the effects. For those of you who have the rack, if your keyboard doesn't have any assignable controllers, you may want to consider getting an extra controller, such as the K2600, which is assignable sliders, giving you the ability to send MIDI controller messages. If the Kurzweil is at its default settings, then slider 1 is assigned to MIDI controller number 6, and sliders 2 through 8 are set to controllers 22 through 28. A complete list of the preset programs and how control sources affect them is printed in the K2600 reference manual. There are actually 4 different types of programs, although 2 types are very similar. Regular programs can have up to 3 layers, and the left side of the display will show the name of the key map for each layer. Programs which have between 4 and 32 layers are called drum programs, but they do not have to have drum sounds in them. They can be made of any sound, but we call these programs drum programs because that is the typical use for a program with a lot of layers. When you scroll to a drum program, the left side of the display will show this and tell you how many layers there are in the program. Other than the number of layers, drum programs function identically to regular programs. The third type of program is entirely different. These are called KB3 programs, and they are special programs which emulate the way a real B3 organ works. You will find these programs between programs number 750 and 769. When you call up these programs, the sliders in the mod wheel function differently than they do for regular programs. The 8 sliders function like the first 8 drawbars on a B3, and the mod wheel functions as the 9th drawbar, just like on a real organ. Moving the sliders down towards you brings up the volume for that partial, and pushing it up brings the volume down, which is the opposite of the way a slider would typically be programmed in a synthesizer. The only exception to this is the mod wheel, which still works the same, adding volume as you bring up the mod wheel. The buttons above the sliders access other standard B3 functions, such as adding percussion and turning on the chorus vibrato effect. One thing to be aware of with KB3 programs is that in order to emulate the way a real organ works, the Kurzweil grabs a specific number of voices as soon as you call up the KB3 program, and those voices are reserved for the KB3 program, whether or not you're playing any notes. You can determine the number of voices used by setting the number of tone wheels in the program when you edit it. All of the preset KB3 programs are designed so that they use 40 of your 48 voices of polyphony. So typically, when you're using a KB3 program, you'll probably be playing it by itself, or maybe split in a setup with a bass program. But you should not expect to be able to sequence with a KB3 program and have a lot of polyphony left for other tracks. The fourth kind of program is a live mode program. To use live mode, you must first have the sampling option and sample RAM installed in your instrument. Live mode programs are actually just like regular VAST programs, with one exception. Instead of using the preset ROM samples, or samples you load into RAM for the source of the sound, you can process anything that comes into the sample input through both the VAST synthesis engine and the effects. This allows you to use the Kurzweil as a real-time synth and effects processor for external signals. To use live mode, you first need to have something plugged into an analog sample input. I'm going to be using a guitar. Next, you need to turn live mode on. Press the sample mode soft button. Make sure that the source is set to external and input is set to analog. Now, scroll down to the mode and set it to live in. Now you can use the gain parameter to adjust the amount of input signal. The sample input on the K2600 is line level, so if you're running a signal from a microphone or a guitar, you'll either want to run it into a preamp or mixer first, or else bring the gain parameter up. You will find the preset live mode programs located between 740 and 749. I'll call up program 746, which is live mode paraflange. So I have the guitar running through a parametric EQ, which I can control with slider A, and the mod wheel, and a flange effect, which I can control with slider B. In order for a live mode program to actually send the live input through the Kurzweil, you have to strike a note on the keyboard. So I'll strike C4 and hold it with the sustain pedal. Here's another example using a tube distortion. The 2600 is 16-channel multi-timbral. That means you can have a different program on each channel. You can see what program is on each channel by using the channel bank buttons or the channel soft buttons. You can easily call up a specific program for a MIDI channel by going to that channel and picking the program you want. But if you have the rack, keep in mind that you may be looking at channel 2, but if you are sending from your keyboard on channel 1, you may still be hearing the program that is on channel 1. I'll show you how to change this in the next section. You can play any program on any channel, with one exception. The KB3 programs can only be played in a single MIDI channel. You choose this channel with the organ channel parameter on the master mode. If you are in a different MIDI channel and you scroll to a KB3 program, you will see it displayed in parentheses and it will not sound.